Good afternoon, everyone. Wow, we're very loud. Today we're here to talk about DevOps, one of my favorite subjects because every time I ask anyone about DevOps, they initially follow up with, what is DevOps? It's a good question. So today we're going to talk about what it is at Walmart and what it means to do DevOps at scale and what it takes to actually get there. Here's our agenda for today. We'll go through an introduction. What is DevOps? What is scale? Scale to Walmart is a little bit different than scale to many other companies. We'll talk about sustainability because one thing when we talk about DevOps, we talk about the community around us. We'll talk about our development practices, our quality assurance practices, and our operations. Hopefully by the time this conversation is done, we'll all come together and be like, okay, this makes more sense, or we'll all leave a little bit more confused. Hopefully it'll be the first. So my name is Ryan McGuinness. I'm the principal architect at Walmart Labs. Nice to meet you all. Thank you very much for coming. I've been doing programming for quite some time. As you can see up here, I've been on it for 20 years, or as we equate it in dog years, 7 years for every 1 year that we've worked on the internet. My first year wasn't on the internet. It really wasn't invented until the next one, or at least as popular. So what I'm responsible for at Walmart is taking care of all of our platform, and that's what we actually build Walmart systems on. So when we talk about our internal cloud practices and our internal services, that falls into my responsibility domain. So what is DevOps? This is the Wikipedia definition of DevOps right now. So you go out there and you say, it's a software development method that emphasizes the roles of both software development and other IT professionals with an emphasis on IT operations. Did anyone else just read that and go, what does that mean? I read this, I'm like, okay, that's really confusing because it's missing some very key information. I looked at this and said, this is woefully incomplete. This definition focuses on IT. Why do we do IT? The fundamental question is why do I wake up every day, go to work, and actually do something? DevOps isn't about us as IT people. It's about who we serve, our customers. So when we look at this situation and we say, okay, I've got this definition that Wikipedia gave us. Now I've got the reality of, I go to work every day, I have to solve problems, I have to do things, I have to actually affect my customer. What does that mean to me? What does it mean when you actually have to do it at scale? What does all of this come down to? So when we talk about scale for Walmart, Walmart was founded in 1962 by Sam Walton. Do you guys know that we have 85 brands worldwide? It's not just Walmart. We have Asda in the UK, and we have several other chains around the world. We have 2.2 million associates. So if we just served our associates alone, we would have a huge audience to talk to. We have 11,500 stores. That's in 28 countries worldwide. We do e-commerce in 11 countries. We have 198 million unique users. 20 million users are on our site every day. So scale's big, right? So if we say, we heard this morning, we said, our scale, we were really happy when we had 300,000 people hit our site, right? That's great. Scales differ. It really is. Scale is important to our companies. It's what we do for our customers that actually make our scaling problems unique. We have 31 virtual clouds and 7 data centers. Our data centers are both on-premise and off. We have currently in our GEC, our global e-commerce, we have about 3,417 applications and services. This isn't just an application. It's not just a front-end website. It's how do we actually enable our website and enable our customers to do their work. We currently do approximately 1,000 deployments every single day, going to dev, QA, prod, stage, right? We have every one of us. We work in the real world. We have lots of environments that we have to take care of. DevOps is supposed to help us enable those environments with very little human interaction. So it was kind of interesting. I was having a great conversation last night, and someone introduced me to the CALMS acronym about community, automation, what's the lean, and sorry, I'm a little broken up there, and new to me. It was great because I'd actually described all of this inside of the topic that we're talking today without actually knowing the acronym, because it's not something that we've really focused on an acronym to solve these problems. What we have focused on is what does it mean in order to get these things done. So one of the first things we talk about in our company is sustainability. Our sustainability problem at Walmart is we have a lot of code. We just saw how much we're actually doing and pushing into development, but code in itself doesn't make a successful world. It doesn't make successful DevOps. Sustainability is one of the key tenets of making sure that we can do things, right? Shareability is is the S in comms. Sustainability should probably be there also, because when we talk about how we interact at work, a good presentation not very long ago was the CTO from Caterpillar came on stage and he said one thing that was very important. He'd come up there and he'd said, every day, culture eats innovation for lunch. Right? Culture is one of our key problems with everything that we do, and sustainability becomes part of our culture because without it, we develop and we slowly wither and die on the vine. Or we end up costing much more money in order to keep that sustainability. When we talk about the environmental concerns, we talk about our workplace, our management, right? How many of us are engaged in pushing the envelope with our companies or inside of ourselves every day? Everybody? Everybody really gung-ho about changing things? Is it hard to change things? Yes. It's very difficult because culture is hard to overcome. Culture is a sustained being. It is someone who actually has habits, and we have habits as companies. At Walmart, when we spun up our GEC division, it was all about change. Sam Walton, one of Sam Walton's tenets in his company was, I have caused change constantly throughout my company to ensure that we grow. So I'm fortunate enough to work at a company where change is easy. I used to work for the financial industries. Change is not easy there. But it's up to us to actually work in our environment and grow those environments, especially as developers and especially as leaders in our company. Sometimes as a developer we think, oh, someone came down and said I had to do it this way. I did it this way. It worked really great for like 5 minutes. Then we added load to it and it failed. Well, without that reciprocation and talk and discussion and push, our environment stagnates. Right? Anyone here have fish? Yes, no? Lots of fish owners? None? You put a fish in a bowl and you do anything to that environment, the fish die. Right? The same is true with our environment at work. When we talk about the social side of life, what are we doing at our companies to actually promote what we do internally to the social world around us? Are we participating in talks? Are we participating in our Java 1 community, our local jug? Have we actually established a community at work where it's good to grow, where we have foundation? Do you guys have a local Java group or any type of technology in your company? Have you tried to establish it? Have you tried to push the boundaries to adopt? So one of the, I'm sure everyone here has gone through, if you're a Java developer anyway, have gone through the Java 8 update. Have you pushed Java 8 into your environment? Or are you still on Java 6? Yeah, that's okay, a lot of people are. But to get there, we have to continually push on our social side and use that social side to help educate our managers to move to the next level. The next side of sustainability is economics. Without an economic backing side to anything that we do, what are its odds of survival? Right? They start to dwindle. When we push things even into the open source community, if we push it out there and there's no champion for that, it dwindles. When there's not backing to the things that we do, they dwindle. What does all of this have to do with DevOps? Because without a sustainable future, everything that we're doing today to be operational has a limited lifespan unless we continually push back into the community around us and help learn from the community around us on how to guide our companies. So culture. This is one of those things where, again, this may seem, this is a philosophical debate about what it is we are inside as people and how we interact with our companies and how we interact with our peers, our subordinates, all the way from the top down. Company leadership is a big step in everything that we do. If your company's culture does not buy into an operational excellence model, if your company's only goal is to get software out as fast as possible, that's great. It has a very limited lifespan. We get into this model where we have explorers, town settlers, and town planners. When we initially start projects, we're on that exploring side. We're going out and we're building things, we're building it quickly. It's really great, it's fun, it's exciting. But as we start to continue to grow into that settler motion where we're actually building something that people use, our model becomes more important to be usable and to be sustainable and to be monitored. But that has to come from the top of the company. If you're in a startup, we'll get into what you need to do to actually plan for that future. So Java users groups are part of a culture. If you haven't founded one or if you're not a part of one, I highly recommend it. If you're not, just two slots back, there was a JSR, there's another JSR community. There's lots of JSR talks today about how to adopt a JSR. Is anyone in here part of the JSR community? Yes, I know you guys are. So we have JSRs and we have them for a reason. It's not because it's outdated or it's old-fashioned. When we talk about a JSR or doing implementations with a JSR, especially as a company who is larger and wants to actually not own everything for technical debt, we adopt a JSR and we help get our ideas in so that other people understand the scale that we're trying to achieve and understand the problems that we've had and how we've solved them so that other people don't face, excuse me, don't face the same problems we have when we grow. They're able to quickly adopt it based on what we do in this JSRs. Not all JSRs are clear. Some of them are very vague about, and they leave a lot of wiggle room for implementation. But without that community involvement there, people don't know what you've been through. And then, of course, the open source community. Patching, communicating, and working with people in open source is a big deal. Everyone in here, I'm going to bet, uses open source. Yes? Excuse me. So if you use open source and you don't commit or communicate or work with the community that's provided it, how valuable is that going to be in a year, 2 years, 10 years? It starts to dwindle. And those are the things that we need to actually work through. So here's some very notable people that are actually here at as most of them are here at the conference. I know Tricia can't make it this time, but people who you actually want to look for in the world and say, wow, and this is not all of them. I could have, we have an entire speaker deck. We have slides of people. We have all of the folks down in the booths downstairs. But community and getting intertwined with the people who are making a difference helps us get excitement into our company. It helps us drive change. This is all important for DevOps because DevOps, if you're not doing it, is about change. It's about changing the way that you think. It's about changing the way that you practice development in order to make something better. Fair? So just out of curiosity, how many people are doing DevOps today? Awesome, not as many as I would hope. How many of you don't know what DevOps is? Yep, fair question. So if we tackle it from breaking it down into its components and we say, okay, I am not a pie-in-the-sky architect. So first off, I'm doing a little bit more of my introduction. I'm a practicing architect. I code every single day. I love what I do. I believe in what we do as developers. And when I code, I make sure that it can actually run in a production environment, even if it's just a prototype. Because anytime you commit code to a repository, someone is going to look at it, inevitably, and copy and paste it somewhere else. So If you're willing to take that risk and just throw code into a repository, that's fine. It may have ramifications. So as a development team, we actually have to do some standards, depending on where you're at in your world. Some folks go overboard on governance. They have standards that make no sense. They have standards that tell you where and when to place a tab, where to place your spaces. Who cares? What we actually have to standardize on is what are we going to do? Which patterns are we going to use? How are we going to ensure connectivity? What happens when connectivity fails? What happens when I need to recover? What is my mean time to recovery? Instead of going, well, I think you really used the wrong formatter for your code today. You've all heard that, right? So standardized practice is one of my favorite terms in all of this is just enough governance, just enough standards to make sure that you're fitting your business needs. The thing that was woefully missing in that whole conversation about what is this thing that we're calling DevOps, we're missing the customer. Who do we serve? We serve a customer and we serve a business need, and oftentimes as technologists, we get caught up in our own dogma. We get caught up in everything that we do as IT focusing on IT for IT's sake. None of that leads to anywhere except for a bunch of IT dogma, and the business says, hey, we need to turn, and the IT guys go, I'm sorry, we can't turn right now because our policy dictates that we can't turn until after November. That's our policy. And of course the business comes back and they say, what are you guys doing? So that development side has to serve a purpose. The philosophical boundary of development is to serve some type of a purpose. The folks who were speaking here before me, they said, how did we start? They started with a dream, right? How do we start our days? We start with a mission. We're developers. We should be starting with a mission. Some of us don't. Some of us don't have that type of leadership or guidance, but we can bring that to the table. Everybody in here is actually responsible to bring that to the table. The other side of development is making sure that you have the right tools for the job. And this one's hard because part of DevOps is making sure that whatever you're working on, you have the capabilities to make it useful. You have the capabilities to make it troubleshoot, the ability to troubleshoot it. You have the capabilities to automate what you're doing with it. And a lot of times we start off in this world with the tools that are out there in open source because our manager comes to us or someone else and says, it's free. There's a big price tag behind the free for how to actually implement that. And we bring in X, Y, or Z to automate our systems. We may finally get it done. We might go out and buy someone above us has said, hey, we're going to go buy a solution. That gets dumped in our labs. There's a lot of things in our tool set that we don't control, but a lot of things that we have to work on with the goal of automation. When we talk about deployments and we talk about moving our code through the system, all of it comes down to automation at the end of the day and knowing your tools. A fellow from Tommy Tribe named Andy, he's actually sitting right over here, said in his last in one of his last talks, he said, know your tools. Know your tools and learn how to work with your tools, because if you don't, you're not actually using what you have. If you're trying to jump ship and go find something better over here, you end up actually wasting time instead of learning what's in front of you. And it's a very important thing for us as developers to do. The other one is the promise of agile development. This is a catch-22. How many people are actually doing agile development? Quite a few. So at the end of every sprint, you do a demo? Maybe, maybe not. Some folks, yes, we do that religiously. Agile is a wonderful tool, and we use it to succeed, and we use it to actually bring value to the business sooner. So the promise of agile development in the DevOps community is so that we can get our work in front of our stakeholders sooner with delivery and feedback. Without that feedback loop, we don't actually know how to do the next few steps, which is monitoring, metrics, and training on the tools that we've developed. So once we get past actually the promise of Agile and truly working in an Agile way versus, Agile, where we say it's really Waterfall, and we might have some kind of Agile, we call it Agile, but at the end of the day, we're still Waterfall. Waterfall has its purpose. It is very much for the town settler. It is the town planning meeting to actually use Waterfall, because you can't build a road Agile in an Agile fashion, right? You actually have to know what you're going to. You have to know what you're building on. But when you come down to how to develop software, we have to do it in an Agile manner for our business. Training is important, and usually I stress training, because a lot of times whenever we start a project or a product for our business and our development side, I have found that most of our developers in the world, and this isn't just at Walmart, this is everywhere I've ever been, has been developers who have been doing a consistent job for N number of years in the past, and they haven't broken outside of that box. So we have to bring training into this, because we have to get to that next level of, how do I actually use a circuit breaker pattern? What does this mean to us? How does this affect our customers? How does it affect our users? And more importantly, how does it affect me as a developer? What are these newfangled Lambda things, and do they actually mean anything to me? Those are the things that training actually should bring to the forefront. Open source from the start this is a mindset, and it's something that when we look at how we do development, there are a lot of great practices we can learn from our open source communities. A lot of great things like limiting our third-party resources, making sure that we have a focused product set, making sure that we're broke out modularly. All of these things will aid into the operations side when we actually get into doing the deployments. So today when we talk about open source, we say, okay, yeah, that's over there. But you can practice open source internally by actually following their best practices. That goes down to actually how you commit code, how you work with each other in your coding products, right? How many do you actually fork internally and have your own versions and do pull requests, and make sure that you're actually doing things very well in a good distributed way, so that when it comes time to do operations, you don't accidentally mess things up. It's a very big step for all of us to look at what the best practices around those are. And there's a lot of books on that. Just one thing is how to actually establish a good workflow with Git. So those concepts that are actually in that open source community are places that we can look for additional patterns to follow. This last one, metrics driven from the start. This one's very important. Is everything that you ever do need to be metered or have a metric wrapper around it? The answer is no. But you do have to consider how you're going to do your metrics. Metrics from the start means that you sit down with your business unit and who you're designing the system for, and ask them, what is important for you to measure? How do we measure our success to the system? Is it transactions per minute? Maybe. Is it mean failures per hour? Maybe. It depends on the business strategy that we actually get into. If you go off and you instrument everything that you do, so inside of Spring, for example, I create this awesome point cut. And that point cut says, I'm going to instrument every single method, and I'm going to know what methods are being called and which ones are being used, and how much time is being spent in each method. And then I get into this really big problem, storage. Now I can't actually, I'm spending more time on the network, writing network traffic out, because I've over-instrumented my package with data that no one cares about. That's a big deal. So when we talk about metrics driven, should be purpose-built metrics. We actually need to come together with our business teams to figure out what those purpose-built metrics are. Now, not all metrics are derived from the business. Some of them are important to us. Where we talk about the difference between eventing and erroring, we say an event is something that happens that is actionable. An error may or may not be actionable. It is just something that we capture. It has static detail associated with it. We're technologists. We would like to know that information. We'd like to be able to find that information. We still have to do that, but do it in a way that won't cause problems. Your initial construct on a smaller scale, writing to disk, is okay. We all do it. We all push meters and metrics out somewhere, whether it's to a database, whether it's over the wire somewhere where they're capturing it. Initially, that seems fine. It does not scale well. As you guys know, we've been having a lot of conversations about stream in the conference and how to actually use streams meaningfully. And if you go out and do any research on the Hystrix APIs or anything that Netflix has created, you'll find that they were actually pushing things through streams from day one. I'm going to create a stream source, and I'm going to register with an upstream stream consumer. That's how we get to scale faster, is by actually providing the ability to do something without equating it to ephemeral disk or disk that we may not have as we start to run into clouds. Okay, so from the development side, before we get into automation, I'd originally labeled the talk Java and DevOps, so I'm trying to cover a bit more Java in here. But DevOps it's global. It doesn't really apply to any single language. We use a lot of Java at Walmart to do all of our business-centric services. Matter of fact, we use node.js on our front end and our web services, or on our website, to actually render the site, talking to our Java side. That's the way that we like to work. So we have a nice polyglot. On our store side, we have a lot of .NET, so we have everything across that gamut. But everyone follows the same practice of, when I build, I'm going to use the Java example here to finish this out. When I build, I do everything that I can to monitor metrics locally first. So I ensure that when I emit metrics, they're emitting correctly on my local machine before I do any check-ins. I do everything with Maven locally. We make sure that our developers know their tools. So we do training around Maven, and we do training around Nexus and what it means to get into those areas. If we can't do that locally, then no one can ever reproduce it, right? We get out to the world where we do the old throw it over the wall technique, which is what DevOps was originally, the original poster for DevOps, if you hadn't seen it, is the developer throwing their code over a wall to operations and saying, good luck. That can't succeed. It doesn't succeed. So we make sure that our developer practices are good from the get-go. And what that boils into is test-driven, which means that before you do anything with your project, you're writing tests to ensure that they work. You make sure that you have the appropriate metrics defined for your development staff. The appropriate metrics are important, right? And I say this boundary because not everyone is going to will ever achieve 100% line coverage, 100% method coverage, right? You have to understand what your business needs are and what's important to them, and then define them on a per team basis and figure out how to enforce them. So today, when you develop with Maven or you develop with any of your tool sets, you want to ensure that your Maven plugins are actually capable of measuring how much test coverage you have, what that test coverage means, and then whether or not it's actionable. Most of us, we may instrument these things. We might even use the tools that we have to get the numbers, but if that's all it is a number, and that number does nothing for your company or for you, like stop you from doing something crazy, then it's done no good. You've got a great number, right? Numbers without methodology, numbers without philosophy behind them are just that. They're just numbers. They're numbers floating around somewhere. So on this particular side, I just covered through the standard workflows as far as what it is we do for development and test-driven. Test locally first, test locally again, merge, test again, make sure that you don't break anybody, then create pull requests. I'm a very big fan of pull requests. So on my team alone, we currently have 3,000 developers across the world that report into, I think I've got somewhere in the hundreds of repositories just for my team. If they were all merging to master, it would be chaotic because, people break things. I break things. I'm guilty. It happens. But we do it locally before we actually get it up into the branch. So that all happens before we check in. And what I have down here on this, on the bottom of those, the purple and red there, is some tools that we have and that we use fairly religiously. Does everyone here use Sonar? Yes? Yes, that's awesome. Sonar is a great tool, and if there's any managers out there, your team should be using Sonar. You should be looking at their progress because Sonar can actually tell you if people are doing their job. Sonar is important for us because what we've actually done is we've gone above and beyond Sonar, and we use the metrics that Sonar emits to then help us determine whether or not we can do releases. It also helps feed our technical debt dashboards that we actually assign to each of our development teams. Have you been doing your job? We have that report and view. Sonar is just one tool that can help us get there. That's the one that we've chose. There are many others out there that you can choose to use. The fact of the matter is, if you've noticed the theme yet, everything is metrics driven. Absolutely everything can be measured in a way that is meaningful to you and your business. Otherwise, again, we have this sense of I'm developing with feel good in mind instead of developing and getting something done that I've measured and tracked. This gets to be extremely important in DevOps. Does anyone know why? Why are all of these metrics necessary for DevOps? Because without them, you will not effectively establish trust. You will have a sense of trust that is, well, I trust him. He's built a few times and he hasn't broken the last week. Or she's done a really great job and she's pushed everything into the repository. And we've never had any problems with her, so we trust her, right? That's human trust. But we cannot build systems in DevOps or automation unless we actually establish metrics-driven trust. Something that actually helps our business come to terms with the fact that we want to get to CD someday, continuous deployment. Continuous deployment, that's still a unicorn for a lot of us, right? We look out there and we go, wow, CD looks awesome, and our business says, no way. You are not going to just let some machine push code to production because they don't trust us. They don't trust what you do. We haven't provided them the data set to be trustworthy. Just so you guys know, we're working on CD. We've been working on it for about 3 years. It's still a unicorn. We're a lot closer to automation. We can push a button and do it, but there still has to be trust. And those are things that we actually build over time in order to get the business to let us do our job. And all of us have to fight, security concerns, especially if we have any type of payments, payment gateways, customer effects. When we talk about DevOps, we talk about trust because the trust isn't for us, it's for our customer. In today's day and age, our customer can go anywhere. We lose that customer's trust, and we've lost a lot more than anything else. On the one of the first slides there, one of my favorite quotes from Sam Walton was the customer can fire everybody in the company from the CEO down. All they have to do is stop shopping with us. So that's why we don't have full CD yet, because we don't trust that we're not going to affect our customer. Do you? Anybody? Does anybody do CD out there? No one. Just you guys, I didn't see one hand. So that's, oh, one. Okay, I saw one. The fact of the matter is that when we talk about this continuous delivery system, it is a unicorn, and we have to be able to get to the tools that we have up here. So if you look at the far right-hand side here, as we say, we're fairly far along. We have tools at Walmart that manage our cloud stack. That's that back one there that actually tells me what my deployments look like. That big pinwheel on the side, that tells me what my entire topology for deployment looks like. That's great. I have a little bit of information there that I can take, I can be actionable with. The very top one is this is the topology recipe. This is what you meant, right? And then the one behind it is actually our build tool, which is metrics driven. And it will not let you do a release. It will not actually let you click a physical button or do anything else unless you're meeting your code quality. Because Most of our tools, well, they're sharp knives. You can run as fast as you can with them because they don't naturally put checks and balances in place. If you're building with Jenkins, for example, you can push a button anytime. There's not necessarily a check and balance in there unless you go through and enable it and do a lot of work with it that makes it useful to your company. So those are the things that we have to do in order to get to becoming a better shop for DevOps, is making sure that we actually have the information available to us so that we can make metrics-based decisions. Bad transition, my apology. All right. Operations. So this is as we worked through this progression of conversation, we started with us, the developer. We've moved to how we actually move things into production. And now we talk about operations and when does operations begin. Most people believe that operation is only applicable to production. Is that how your shops work? Operations is production only? The fact is that operations can't be production only, because if it's production only, once it gets out there, they have to have everything in place in order to support and maintain your software. If we actually throw it over the wall to operations, we're missing a tenet of Agile. Our stakeholders weren't in the room with us, and that's what this slide is supposed to help illustrate. Operations should be a part of your delivery schedule from the development environment upwards. So they know actually what they're doing. And they know what you're doing, and they can provide input. As a stakeholder, they can help you derive what metrics are useful to them, as most of them actually run the NOC. So if we actually look at this and we said, our operations staff, they're on board with us. They're actually a stakeholder. We have them in the room when we're going to our quality assurance environments so that they can help us define the metrics that they need in order to sustain the app. They also want to know, what does this app do? Who does it affect? If you look at a dependency graph today of your applications that you deploy, do we actually have a view of what the positive and negative effects are upstream and downstream? Do you know what the effects of your service architecture are without the implementation of a service bus? If you don't have the data, odds are good that you don't. So when we look at this particular set, we say we as the development team are going to enable our operations team by getting them in the room as a stakeholder to run this in production. Doesn't take me off the hook, by the way. I wrote it, I own it. So because I wrote it and I own it, I'm still going to be in the room if something bad happens. That's imperative, that I actually have that capability. But it's also very important that they don't call me in the middle of the night when it just has a hiccup, or I'm not on the phone 24/7. Once we move it into our pre-production environments, we follow the same role. Why do we actually want people there? Why do we want our customers there? Where are we going to load test this thing before it goes to production? Do we actually load test religiously before we do anything? Or do we just load test before, the holiday? Yeah, that doesn't work either, because then everyone's in a big panic, right? Once we move into production, this is actually the dangerous territory. This is where operations lives and thrives. And if you saw our NOC is amazing because they have a wall similar to this one here. It's actually a giant touch screen. It's pretty amazing. They can move their widgets around. They can actually see what places in the world are being affected by specific outages, but they do it all based on the metrics that we delivered to them. We gave them the ability to bring it into a stream, to bring it into big data streams so that they can actually look at their walls and know what's happening where. Production affects the customer. So getting to the meaning of what I was saying earlier, you can see the customers all throughout my slide. This is a very important aspect of life in retail. I hope it's a very important aspect to you as developers too, is that the customer is by far who we're actually doing all of this for. So that we can release new features, so that we can do things very quickly and have rapid change to positively impact the lives of our customers. So DevOps is about being able to get to this trust scenario where we can do these releases and do things in a timely manner so that we effectively have established trust through metrics. We have delivered them all the way up to the customer, and we have done so in a quality way and an automated way that doesn't actually cause us to lose a customer. That's the worst thing that can happen. Even worse than that is actually releasing, getting that headline in the news of, oh yeah, somebody's site was down for 2 hours. All right? We've had that happen recently. We're not perfect. We're not perfect at DevOps yet, but we're working toward it in order to make sure that we actually don't have those outages. Right? When you talk about, we actually have a slogan on our wall, changing the world 1 million people at a time. Right? And you saw the numbers, 20 million logins per day. That's a lot. When we mess up, people tend to notice. So we don't like that. When we talk about that DevOps experience, we want to make sure that our developers understand that from the top down, and really our culture does. Because DevOps is a cultural change from the top to the bottom. Your managers have to buy in, the developers have to buy in, and everyone on the in-between. So that Wikipedia definition and IT personnel, everybody. Still too vague for me though. So in these definitions here, I'd like to actually, if you guys can, provide me feedback afterward. Ryan McGuinness 5 on Twitter. I'd love to hear from you, because when we talk about DevOps, like I said, I've broken it down. Development is about programmatically solving problems to make your customers' lives better. This is, in business terms, it's a value proposition. Why do I want to do DevOps? Your manager asks you. This is why. My operations, therefore ensuring that my company's image by providing customers with good experiences. This is value perception. So when we talk about the interaction side of our developers with our customers with our company, they only see the public-facing image, or they see the public API, or they see whatever it is we're delivering. If we fail them, the perception starts to decrease. There's a great paper released not too long ago about when we develop software, what has to be great, especially if it's free. And effectively, all IT software to a company is free. They don't actually see a cost to it unless they're up in the larger number crunching area going, well, this project actually did cost us money, but most people perceive it as free. So if you don't follow these rules, what they actually do is they go look for software somewhere else, right? If it's free, it must have a good user interface. It must be stable. It must be predictable. Those are things that are very important. And then once we get into that DevOps side, we say it's a culture for ensuring the customer experience by providing automated, measurable, operational excellence through business meaningful metrics. Would you guys agree with that statement? Yes, no? Pretty important that last part, business meaningful metrics, because I can have metrics all day long that I'm dumping out into my big data store that if the business doesn't have any idea what they are, I've delivered no value to them. So that's what we're trying to do in our DevOps departments, is do that. And sorry, that was measurable and purpose-built. So if we look at and this one is camps, it's not the original, because I said it's culture, automation, measurable, purpose-built, not lean. Lean doesn't make any sense to me. Lean means small, somewhat there, but really it's purpose-built. Each one of our systems must be purpose-built, and then it must be sustainable. So if I go off and I deliver everything that I want in the Golang, because I'm a super guru at Golang, or because I'm really good at Perl, I did everything in Perl, does it make it sustainable? No. I can write some really ugly Perl. It totally compiles. It totally works. It might have actually solved the need, but when I hand it off, no one can actually sustain it. It is not something that we actually invest in. All right, so we've actually got a lot of time left. We've got about 16 minutes, and this is really my last slide on what is DevOps. I hope I've answered your guys' questions today. Hopefully no one's leaving confused, more confused than they did when they came in. Anyone? Oh, okay, I've left one person totally confused, and I'm sorry for that. See me afterward. Okay, so thank you guys. Thank you for coming. If you have any questions, come see me afterward. I'd be happy to answer anything that we have for a company. Okay? Thank you.